Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Coin Drop Podcast, episode number 70. I want to briefly apologize for the week off with very short notice for those of you on our Discord for last week. We did announce that on the Discord, so if you're not in there, make sure you stop in and just, hey, check the announcements every now and then. If there's no episode, we probably announced it, but, it's the way it goes. Tim had an event I think you went to, right? A play or something like that?
Yeah, I went to a symphony. I had bought tickets to the symphony more than a month prior, and I knew that it was on a Saturday, but for some reason I just assumed I was going to be more than done by the time it came. And more or less, we went to a symphony. It was Beethoven, and it was a female leading it. Her name was Tessa Lark, and apparently she's kind of a big deal. I had no idea who she was until someone that was at the symphony was like, yeah, no, she's like really big, and she actually has been like nominated for Grammys and stuff like that. So like, very cool. Interestingly enough, she's from Kentucky, and she has a lot of what do you call the she's really good with a man, why can't I think of the dang, like, I'm talking, it's like the guitar type thing. It's like the guitar type thing, but say it again. A
lute?
No, it's the like southern one.
Banjo.
No.
That's the southern.
Fiddle. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, that's a violin, bro.
Yeah, my bad. She's good with a fiddle, and she actually played us one of her like super southern ones too. And it was really interesting. The whole symphony, basically, with her music, almost all of them were plucking like half the time rather than actually using their.
Oh, nice. That's wild.
Their thing. It was really interesting. Really cool music. But anyways.
Cool.
That was why I was out.
And I was out because I had spent literally the last 2 days weeding about a quarter acre of property by hand. So I was exhausted and done. But hey, I got grass growing. I got grass growing through seed.
Good.
I got water on it.
We've been waiting on that.
Yeah.
All of us.
You've been talking to my wife too much, dude. Okay, so I just want to address a couple of things very quickly here at the top of the episode. One, if the audio quality on this episode is a little bit shite, that is 100% my fault. Our editor is going through a very personal situation, and it had to step away for a while, reasonably so. So I have no idea when Mike will be back. There is no pressure there for him to return. He is going through something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So Mike, our hearts go out to you, buddy. I hope things wrap up quick for you. That said, we also have a Patreon. So check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/coindroppod. We'll be talking about some extra content over there tonight. I've got a couple of topics to talk about over there. And you just get extra content, day early access. It's all linked to Spotify. So you can actually link your Patreon to your Spotify and get access to that without having to go to Patreon and download it. Like, it just comes to you every week, day early. So we also go over the upcoming games for the week that are interesting to us over there. So might be a good place to just find out what's coming up that you might be interested in. You also get additional show notes over there with links to all of those games that I can find. So it's really worth considering. It's $3 a month. Helps us continue to do this show, make improvements, and things of that nature. Before we jump into the main topics tonight, Tim, I got to ask you a couple of questions about Final Fantasy 16.
All right.
Do it. You have said on record that this is your new favorite Final Fantasy.
I actually don't think I've solidified that.
Okay.
But I've said that, like, I believe it at the very least, it's right next to Final Fantasy 6. And I just haven't made my decision yet. It's been really difficult for me to make that decision because 6 has been my favorite since, like, forever. So I'm going to caveat this with what I'm going to say here because I've only played about 2 hours of the game so far. He bought it. Yes.
I did not buy it. It was actually gifted to me by 1%. He bought it for me.
Hey,
so
that's cool.
Yep. I streamed it on our Discord channel, chatted with 1% while I played it. I'm not seeing why it's your favorite, man. I gotta be honest. Again, very early in the gameplay, but bro, the hour and a half that I played was literally, I'm playing on an Xbox controller, so it was literally just hit X for combat and occasionally dodge. So I don't think it's the combat that's selling you, right?
No, I mean the combat does get really freaking good later on. You start to learn combos, you start to unlock combos, and then as you get farther into the game, you start to get without spoiling anything, you start to get effectively different powers.
Right.
which is feature sets. You get different move sets basically, and you can swap between them, and you can choose how you want your combat to focus. I guess.
Okay.
It's hard to explain that, but basically the combat gets deeper and deeper the farther you get into the game, and they keep giving you more throughout the game.
I figured it did, but like the an hour and a half in and still just hit X, and occasionally I think dodge is like right bumper or something like that on an Xbox controller. Irrelevant, but like, what is it about it that makes it, in your opinion, on par with Final Fantasy VI? Because I got to be honest, I'm having a hard time seeing it.
I mean, it's definitely the storyline. The storyline starts out with a really big bang. One, you get those super epic battles. Did you fight not Ifrit, but Phoenix yet?
I have not. There's the opening cutscene QTE fight that doesn't feel like it needs to be a fight at all, where you're playing as the Phoenix fighting. I don't remember who you're fighing.
You're Ifrit fighting.
Oh, that's what it was. Fighting the Phoenix.
So
right?
you did fight. Phoenix then.
Yeah.
Those get literally significantly better and better every single time, and there's quite a few of them in the game. There's icon fights that are like that, and they start to give you a lot more control. That one was definitely way more of a QTE, and that feel does exist in some of the other fights, but they're not as prevalent as this one. This one was almost entirely QTE. The rest of them might have some QTE sections to the fight, and then they'll actually just be a fight involved in it as well.
Does the game ever open up and like really let you run and play? Because of the like 2 hours I want to say I played, I had like 20 minutes of actual gameplay. Like I felt like I was watching a movie most of the time. Yeah,
that intro is very, very linear. It's mostly story, and it's just trying to explain who the characters are and what the world is. But even that, I don't want to say it doesn't do a good job. It's just there's so much depth to the game that they literally implement a historian effectively in the game, where you can go and talk to, and it basically goes, this is what's going on right now. And I don't know if they've introduced this to you yet, but as you're playing the game, you can actually pause at any point during the storyline and cutscene and everything to basically get more detail of what they're talking about. So you can pause it, and then you can just get like a compendium of information about this character or this section of the world or this section of history or whatever. And that's why they gave you the historian, because the historian explains all of this. And if you want to get super in depth into it, you can. If you want to ignore it, you can. And you're not going to have any less of experience for ignoring it. But if you really like the depth of storyline and history and character building and stuff, you can really dive into it to learn more about why everything's tied together the way it is.
Okay.
So when I say that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's it's the depth of the storytelling, the thought outness, I guess, of the world that they built that really kind of encapsulates it for you. That really puts it up there, in your opinion. Yeah.
So I was basically about to explain what you just, we're trying to figure out. More or less, the reason why I've noticed, or I guess come to a realization, part of the reason why I really like it so much is because it has to do with medieval politics a lot, and how the world really flows, and then how these kingdoms fight these other kingdoms, and all the subterfuge that happens, and so on and so forth. Those have always been my favorite stories for books, like always.
Yeah.
One of my favorite book stories is it's called the Lon Tobin Chronicle. And it's Winds of the Fourlands. Lon Tobin is his previous book sets. But the Winds of the Fourlands is a phenomenal book series that follows medieval politics, basically, but with a whole bunch of magic and stuff thrown in. Gotcha. And this game does that too in a really, really good way. And like I said, I like to really delve into the history. And that historian where you can step in, it literally like pulls up a whole map, and you can like explore the map as it goes, and you can actually even control in time where the map is taking place, so you can kind of like, I don't remember what happened, and then you can like reverse time on the map and then see, and kind of get more of that context. And it's really, really interesting, because like if you really want to get deep into it, you can. If you don't, ignore it.
Got it.
And the characters themselves do enough to draw you in, and the voice acting is so good. Some of those icon fights are just, they're awesome. That first one is lackluster, but they get better every single time. And wait until you get to the Titan fight. Oof.
I will agree. There are some really good points to this game. There's just a lot of very standout, not so great points, like right off the bat with it, that were like, But voice acting is definitely phenomenal. I'll give you that 100%. Graphically, it's really impressive. most of the time. I don't know if it's just a PC port thing, but there were like 2 at the beginning in the training yard, right? In the flashback, where you're playing as Clive or whatever.
When he's younger.
Yeah. Before you go inside, there's like 2 people you can talk to, and they're up against like the wall of the castle. And they look very well, like polygoned and stuff like that. Like they look good. The wall behind them, however, does not look very good. It looks like PS3 quality wall. And it stands out even more because the vines growing on it look very high quality. So it's this weird juxtaposition. But that's just one example of like weirdness with it. Obviously, like that's such a minor thing that it's not that big a deal. But it was just something that poked out at me and like was very funny in my opinion.
It's interesting that you say that too, because Final Fantasy VII had basically that same issue where there was like random textures that were just awful.
Yeah, it did. I remember that. Yeah, even on PC, it did. 1% actually just asked me, when is the next 16 stream? Depending on whether or not I'm going to be playing BG3 with Chris tonight, or if that's an option, next week. If not, we'll play some more tonight for sure. So we'll see. But I'll stream it on the Discord potentially. But well, definitely if I play it, I'll stream it on the Discord so we can chat. But yeah, I just wanted to poke your brain. I don't want to spend too much time on this because from what I've experienced so far, I'm like, I'm not seeing, like, it's interesting, but I'm also seeing like a little bit more Game of Thrones inspiration behind it than I was hoping to see.
Which it definitely has a lot.
Yeah, which is a little disappointing, but I mean, in the time capsule that it came out, you know, Game of Thrones was huge, right? So it makes sense to see that. But
it's a game that's a little slow to start, just a hair, if you ask me. And then as it gets going, it really gets going. But it also has a really good pacing to it, so it's not always, you know, balls to the wall.
Gotcha. Talking about balls to the wall, but in the worst way possible, with just tons and tons of plagiarism. Balls to the wall. Man. Assassin's Creed Shadows. I hope you like that segue. I had to work hard to find that one, but I dug deep and got it. Assassin's Creed Shadows has announced that they're delaying the game until probably one of the worst months possible to release a game at this point, February 2025. And we'll get into why a little bit later. But let's talk about why they postponed, right? What do we know that caused this, Tim?
Okay, so before I get into it, my question would be is why is it when games are delayed, they're almost always delayed to the same time frame? Like why not?
Dude, it's a good question.
Pace them out a little bit, you know? Certain games, like, say, Assassin's Creed, could probably do with more than 3 months of extra polish.
Yeah.
But anyways, so Ubisoft has been struggling for the past month or so. Their stocks just absolutely plummeted. I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's been a large amount.
I can look it up while you're talking.
Basically, since Star Wars Outlaws launched. They launched really soft, which everyone was expecting it to, because there was a lot to be a little worried about. And then when it launched, it had so many bugs. I think we've talked about this already. I won't go too deep into it. It had a lot of bugs. It had a lot of pacing issues. It had the stealth missions were absolutely brutal. If you messed up in any way, shape, or form, done, start over, and various other stuff. So more or less, they decided, maybe we need to polish our games a little bit more, and maybe get some feedback and, you know, build it appropriately. And so on top of the fact that we've already talked about Assassin's Creed Shadows already having a lot of maybe questionable decisions when it comes to how they've chosen Yasuki and so on and so forth, that they've decided to add a little bit of polish to the game because of Star Wars, and just looking at what they've been doing over the past 10, 15 years, honestly, they've been struggling. And so they've actually, at the same time that they delayed this, they announced that Star Wars Outlaws sold worse than they had anticipated.
Significantly.
At the same time, significantly less. Yeah, they didn't give us exact numbers yet, but yeah, the fact that they're like, hey, it didn't sell very well makes me almost certain that my decision to wait for Black Friday was a perfect idea, because it'll probably be on a hefty discount.
Well, on top of it not selling well, they from what I've read, they decided to slap the release it on Steam button early and drop it on Steam sooner than they initially planned, from my understanding. But to go back to stock prices real quick, the day before, I guess August 30th, the day Outlaws came out, Ubisoft's stock price was at $3.77 a share. As of today, well, I guess Friday, they closed at $2.31 a share. They dropped $1.46 per share in price, which is not a huge drop, but that's a pretty big tank.
33%.
Yeah,
33%.
That's a pretty big tank in stocks. So, and stock price doesn't mean everything, but that also shows you like it affects things, right? Like money is everything. So, 1% says I would call 33% a large tank. Yeah, when you consider it in a percentage wise, it's pretty large. But yeah, so anyways, that's kind of where they're at with their stock prices.
Their stock prices are tanking, and they're continuously going down. They're getting a lot of blowback on pretty much all of their major games. It's so much so that actually I'm trying to remember the department title, but basically they've decided to launch an investigation into their own company because they're getting a lot of hate basically from people to basically say, hey, you guys are clearly pushing an agenda here, be it DEI or whatever it is. You're pushing an agenda on people that we don't care about this stuff. Just give us a game. Stop trying to tell us that this or that.
Yeah.
And they basically came out and they gave an actually oddly candid response. They said, quote, I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment-first company creating games for the broadcast with the broadest possible audience, and our goal is not to push any specific agenda. We remain committed to creating games that everyone can enjoy. And that puts a nod to certain directions. And they've apologized to their Japanese audiences for all sorts of issues that we've talked about already.
Yeah.
And they're basically looking into their company to say what the hell's going on, because we've been struggling for quite a while now to make stuff that sells globally, and they've been seeing the sales of their major franchises slowly decline in sales, which is, I don't know if that's something that's really specific to them, honestly, because if you look at, say, Final Fantasy VII, the sequel Rebirth that came out recently sold rather poorly by comparison. Not poorly overall. I think they're a little over 3 million sales, or maybe that's Final Fantasy 16 is at 3 million. But I think 7 Rebirth is at 7 million, while the first one was like 15 to 20 or something like that.
You got to remember, the first part released on 3 different systems at this point, right? So it's PS4, PS5, and PC.
Oh, okay.
So it's been on 3, and part 2 is still only on 1 system. So like you're still pigeonholing yourself. So of course it's going to sell worse.
Well, also, when it released on PS4 had already sold over 100 million units, so there's a lot more people to sell to.
Yes.
And there's also a lot of those people that are like, you know what, I'm not going to buy Final Fantasy VII until all 3 parts are released. So they're waiting. They're waiting for some sort of collection. And so that is a fair point. But we are seeing games, sequels, like even God of War. The Ragnarok sold not poorly, but by comparison to the first one, worse. You can say the same thing about Horizon Forbidden West. It sold worse. And like it seems to be somewhat of a kind of an industry thing. And it also makes me wonder, is it possible that because those sold really well because the previous titles released around the whole COVID timeline where everyone was inside and they had no choice.
I think that's honestly a huge factor.
Yeah, I do too. And so that's my point, is that it's not just Ubisoft that's struggling with this, but they're using this as a reason to hopefully make some changes within their company. They're worried about making sure that they don't look like they're pushing an agenda. They want to make sure their games release for the biggest audience possible, and they make feature complete games, which they actually say that Shadows is feature complete, but they felt like throwing some extra polish on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like everybody is afraid to release games nowadays, and almost rightfully so, right? Like we've seen multiple times, games aren't really allowed to fail anymore. People lose their jobs if a game doesn't sell well. They close studios if games don't sell well. The Alone in the Dark, that looked fantastic. I still haven't played it, but I really fucking want to. They closed the studio because it didn't sell well enough. Games aren't allowed to fail anymore, and it's really an issue because when games aren't allowed to fail, developers and studios aren't going to take risks, which means you aren't going to see innovation. You aren't going to see new ideas. You aren't going to see new IPs. You're going to see Call of Duty Part 7,342. Like, you're not going to see that change, that diversity, right? Because innovation comes from risk, and if games aren't allowed to fail, there's no innovation.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to one of our previous conversations in episodes past about the FTC removing the no competition clause, where basically indies are gonna become even more important. Rather.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. But I don't know. I hesitate to believe anything a CEO says to me about their company, because their whole job is literally just to reassure people, and truth or lie doesn't matter. Their job is to make sales, right? Like, is to increase their stock price and make their stockholders happy. So of course he's going to try and appease everyone and say, no, yeah, we're not trying to push an agenda. That being said, I still don't know that that's what they're doing here. Like, I still don't know that Assassin's Creed Shadows is pushing an agenda. I don't buy that narrative, but I also at the same time can see people's arguments against it, right? Like, they've made choices for this game that, like, probably not the best choices.
I would say they've made choices that games past wouldn't have made it if our current world situation, like the society as a whole, including politics has basically tried to weasel its way into absolutely every aspect of our lives.
Everything.
And basically they're trying to be like, no, or at least it sounds like that. At least that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like you just said, it's not necessarily the truth, but that's what they're saying. And I mean, to be fair, we have seen a lot of video games make choices similar to this, or not even just video games, but movies and TV shows and so on and so forth, have made these sort of decisions, and the vast majority of them are failing. And so I think maybe
Concord to name one.
Yeah, Concord to name one, and lots of television shows on top of it.
Yeah. Maybe
they're starting to notice a trend globally with regardless of the medium, maybe, and they're like, maybe we shouldn't do this, and this is their sort of announcement of, I don't know, trying to go back to the way games were.
Right. And I had a feeling that's the way things were going to go, right? Like, it's very rare that, like, you have such open opposition to an idea and you just kind of say, no, fuck it, we're sticking with this course. You continue to push that idea to a certain point, and then when it starts to not be profitable and you start seeing actual issues with, like, what you're doing in terms of, well, the reality is money in this case, because that's what everything runs on, that's when you start to see that change. We just saw, I don't know if I could say this is why, but we talked about it, I think last week, so episode 69, we talked about The Crew adding an offline mode to a previously only online game, right? Like, people were like, well, screw you, Ubisoft, we're not going to buy your stuff anymore. And they're like, oh, okay, like, we're not going to sell this game unless we do this now. So those choices matter, and those actions matter. I still think that they've gone too far. Honestly, dude, like, I like blood and gore in games, but the level of blood and gore that they have in this Assassin's Creed is so out of the norm from previous games that it feels really directed, I guess, right? Like, I don't buy that it's like, oh, it's all just black guy brutalizing Japanese people. I don't buy that's the reason for it. I think they wanted to just make a more mature Assassin's Creed. It's ninjas. It should be bloody and gory, but, like, Yasuke isn't a ninja in this, so
the intent isn't to say there's a lot of black on Asian hate or crime or whatever. It just happens to be at the same time, which is where it becomes a problem.
Right? Is it causality or is it coincidence? Right?
Yeah, so, I would bet this is more coincidence, because the game has likely been in development for 5 or so years
at least.
But like you mentioned, they do seem to be going a little bit overboard in the gore aspect of things, but that doesn't necessarily bother me. But also, Assassin's Creed's never really been known for that,
right?
So
there wasn't.
Who knows?
Yeah, there wasn't really brutalizations the way we see in this one, which it just seems strange. I'm not against it. Hell, dude, we played Space Marines on the post podcast party last freaking episode, and
there's plenty of gore in that one,
and brutalizations. But like, it's a different tone when you're established IP, and what started with historical accuracy has now gotten to a point where it seems like they don't care about the historical accuracy at all, to the point where they're stealing stuff and just. I don't know. It's a weird situation with Assassin's Creed, and pushing to February. Let's get back to that so we can wrap this up. Pushing to February was a choice. Let me explain. So in February,
it was a bad choice.
It was a bad choice. I'm not sure who made that choice, but let me tell you guys. Here's the lineup in release date order of what's coming out for February. That's big, right? There's other games that'll be pushed here. Just February.
January or March.
Yep. Just February. On the 11th of February, you have the launch of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which I've told you on this podcast is hands down a must buy if you are a fan of RPGs at all and can stomach the first person perspective. Sorry, Logan. Comes out on the 11th. The 14th, Assassin's Creed Shadows decided that's their new release date. The 18th, Avowed, another really good-looking first-person RPG from Obsidian developers, battle-tested, true RPG-making Obsidian, comes out on February 18th. And then, as announced literally earlier this week, Monster Hunter Wilds, February 28th. Yeah. I'm looking at $200+ of video games right here. And all of them are going to eat all of my time. So I have to sit here and go, well, which one am I buying? I can tell you the two I'm already considering buying. Well, the two I am buying. I can tell you the two I'm buying. I'm buying Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Monster Hunter Wilds. I'll get Avowed eventually, and Assassin's Creed, we'll get to you maybe next year. And by next year, I mean 2026 at that point. But they chose one of the most loaded months. I mean, the only thing that could be worse is for Masquerade Bloodlines to decide, yeah, we're going to release February 2, because all they've told us is they were pushed to first quarter of 2025. We have no idea if that's January, February, or March. If they say February, I better start saving my money now, buddy, because I'm not going to have the time to play any of them.
And he's being generous here, too. I mean, there's a new...
Sid Meier?
Like a Dragon coming out.
Yeah.
There's a new Sid Meier's coming out.
Yeah.
And then in March, in the very beginning of March, that new game from Ken Levine, the BioShock developer, Judas, is coming out early March. And then you've got Dune Awakening.
It's Q1.
Adam Fall, the new Killing Floor. There's so many games coming out around that time frame that... Boy, they chose a month.
Yeah. I mean, and Assassin's Creed's a huge franchise, right? So I don't think it's not going to sell, but dude, pick a different time frame. Q2 is notorious. Like, there's not a lot of big sales in Q2. It's mostly summer, so nobody is.
Players are starved for games.
Yeah,
that'd be a good choice of. Yeah,
but I mean, they want their game out. I'm guessing they're trying to hit like the late Christmas shopper kind of thing. I don't know what their plan is, but they chose a time frame that's not ideal because there's so much.
My guess is multiple. You know, it's multiple pronged. You know, they're leaving the Christmas season, which hurts them, and the investors aren't going to be happy.
Right.
They have to try and get as close to that time frame as possible without being, you know, why would we delay it for 2 weeks? You know, type thing.
Yeah.
So they have to release it in a time where people want games still, because they might still have some Christmas money, but also they've got to make their investors happy just in general.
Yeah.
And then if they delay it too much, that's also gonna basically, it's all investors, it's all money, more or less. I guess
as it is with the largest source of entertainment, right? Like it's all
unfortunately
money.
Like, I even saw an article earlier this week that basically said that it's unrelated, but it is related. Games journalism has basically become an investor thing, because basically the only thing that people write about is stuff that they're told to by their overlords, and that's why journalism sucks now too.
Yeah, and then ChatGPT writes most of those articles, so that's the other side of that too. That's why you got to listen to your news here on this podcast with real people, where we talk about these things. So let's talk about something else real. Another great game, also announced earlier this week, the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yotei, has been announced and doesn't have a release date, but is coming out in 2025. And god damn it, this is the reason to buy a PS5 Pro, folks. If you're thinking about buying a PS5 Pro, this is the reason, hands down. Personally, I will be waiting for it to come to PC, which sucks because that means for me it's probably going to be 2026, 2028. Stay classy, San Diego.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
I'm Ron Burgundy. Who put a question mark in the teleprompter?
If you haven't seen those movies, go watch them. They're great.
At least the first one. The first one's fan-fucking-tastic. All right.
Yeah.
Ghost of Yotei.
Ghost of Yotei.
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't watch this, it's at the end of Sony's State of Play that they did. Was it Tuesday?
Wednesday?
Thursday.
It was Thursday.
State of Play Thursday. Just Google State of Play 2024. You'll find it. I guarantee on YouTube you'll find it. It's a great show, actually. They announced another game we'll be talking about here shortly. But they did announce a remake of a game or a remaster of Horizon Zero Dawn, which I think is just a cash grab. It was probably something they could just easily slap together and push out. For those who didn't buy the game last generation, just something they could quickly do. I think it was a waste of time, but that's just me because I already have it on PC and on PS4. I'm not buying it a third time. No thanks. But there is some cool caveats there. If you have it on PS4 and have a PS5, they'll give you the upgrade for like $10. So
$10. Yeah. If you have it on PS4, then yeah, it's $10 upgrade, and it will make it equivalent to Forbidden West graphically. And so for me, as having only bought it once, that's totally worth it. Yeah,
fair enough. That's exactly who it's for, or it's for the people that skip the game completely, right? So, yes. But let's talk about this. Ghost of Yotei. 400 years in the future.
We're 325, I think, to be exact, or 24.
It's from the 1200s to the 1600s. That's all I remember, somewhere in there. But you're playing as obviously a completely different character, potentially completely separated from Jen. We have no idea where the lineage is at this point. Like if this is completely unconnected and a spiritual successor, or if you're playing as one of his descendants. I don't think we've gotten any information on that at all.
Yeah. So one thing I do know is one of the, I don't know if it's creative director, but someone from Sucker Punch came out and basically said that they were looking into the sequel and ultimately decided, instead of continuing to follow Jin's storyline, they decided to focus on the story of the Ghost. And it sounds to me like it's not necessarily Assassin's Creed like when it comes to the Assassin's Guild, but effectively they're trying to keep that idea alive of what Jin became in Ghost of Tsushima, and somehow he passed it along, down the line, down in history, which to me, I hope this is the case, and I doubt it's going to be, but I hope it's the case that Jin, maybe his voice actor is like a narrator or something, like in the beginning.
That would be cool.
End of the game.
Yeah.
That would just be a really cool throwback,
Yeah, that'd be great.
And maybe not, but either way, they're focusing on what Jin became as the Ghost for the storyline. So I don't think that they're going to be connected, but it's entirely possible that it is. Maybe it's his daughter's daughter.
Fucking 100 generations down the road, whatever. 1603, that's what it is, Mount Yotei.
It takes place 1603, and I have some information about that, but you talk first.
So this is where it gets interesting, right? Because like part of what made Ghost of Tsushima so good is it was like factual data. It was slightly altered history. It was like old school Assassin's Creed, right? Like it was all historical events, but you played more or less as a fictitious person, but the events were real. And arguably, the birth of the ninjas started there. So what's really weird here is we're flashing forward 300-400 years, and it's still the quote-unquote ghost. So now we're going into an even more altered history where I guess ninjas never existed. Like that's the only way that this makes sense to me, is because otherwise this would be the ninja of Yotei, right? Because we established that Jin became the first ninja. He became the quote-unquote ghost, which was historically the first ninja.
The first ninja, yeah.
Yeah. So this sounds like we're continuing down a divergent path from our actual real world history, which is fine. Just interesting choice, I guess.
So, I mean, not necessarily. I mean,
because she's clearly a Ronin. Like she's not a ninja.
True, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't say follow that path, or that maybe she chose to be, or she was a samurai, or of that fight. So like there actually is female warriors known in Japan, Japanese history. They're called if I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but onabugeisha. But basically, they're not like. They weren't like some sect of female warriors or something like that, but there were women that were trained to be warriors, but they were more like self-defense, I guess.
There was one of them in Ghost of Tsushima. Lady Masako or whatever her name is.
Yeah, Lady Masako.
Masako, yeah. That's it. No, yeah,
exactly. That's my point. Is there? It's not like the Atsu being a samurai is like what the hell?
Yeah,
because we've known about it for a long time, and the first game had it. So even if it wasn't a historically accurate thing, who cares? The first game had it, right?
It's canonically accurate.
Yeah, but my point is maybe she was one of those onabugeisha Atsu, and she learned about the ninja, or I don't know how popular ninja became, and I don't know how maybe they were just like a ghost story kind of thing throughout a lot of early Japanese history. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't say. I mean, it's a good possibility.
But I do know that ninja were always they were hitmen, but they were hitmen for powerful people.
Right.
So it's entirely possible that people just didn't know about them, and so maybe she learns what the ghosts are or the ninja are, and for whatever reason, the developers have they've called the game the story of vengeance, right? And so again, somehow she learns about them or whatever. Maybe they're going to tell somewhat of a cross between Ghost of Tsushima and the previously mentioned
Assassin's Creed.
Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Kingdom Come.
No, Kingdom Come Deliverance. Because the very first game, he's a nobody, and he basically becomes ingrained in the politics and gets taught how to fight and all this other stuff by royalty. Maybe something like that happens in this game. I've got no reason to believe that other than just thinking about it.
Sure, brainstorming. We're theory crafting. That's all.
Yeah, right. And so, but my point is we don't know yet. We don't know enough yet, other than the fact that she's clearly a Ronin of some sort.
And she dual wields.
The path of the ghost. Yeah,
and she fucking dual wields, which is
I noticed that.
Fuck yeah, dude. I've been playing Jedi Survivor. I only run in dual wield stance, like just hacking shit up. It's so great. So yeah, anytime there's dual wield in a game, it's got me. She's got a fucking musket too, which is wild. Doesn't feel very ghost-like to have a musket, but you do you. What do we know about this time frame? Do you have anything that might be like the focus here for the story? Because 1603 is not that's not very old, honestly, in the grand scheme of humanity.
Yeah, so I did do a little bit of sleuthing. More or less, me and you on the previous podcast before we started back up again.
Yeah.
We discovered that that Ghost of Tsushima was a game about ninja, the birth of the ninja, for that matter. And I don't know if I'm getting anything, that critical this time around, but I did look up that on literally the year 1600, October 21st specifically, October 21st, 1600, there was a major battle in Japan. It's called the Battle of, again, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Sekigahara, and it takes place during the Sengoku period, and it is a major battle that takes place between various people. And honestly, this is 3 years later, and so I don't know if the battle goes on that long. I know this is one of the largest battles in Japanese feudal history, and it's regarded as one of the most important. So I don't know if this is, remnants of that, are happening. But I would be willing to bet that at least the story of the Battle of Sekigahara is going to be mentioned. Like that's almost guaranteed because it's one of the biggest points in Japanese history, right? And so I don't know how they're planning on throwing that in. They say that the final years, the history says that the final years of a particular person who was in charge at the time, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, he had a turbulent reign, and the very end of it basically caused a lot of problems. It caused a power vacuum in Japan, and so that's my guess is what this is going to be about. It's going to be about the power vacuum that happened during those years. And so, again, I don't know how long after the battle strife continued, but my guess is that a few years isn't a big deal. And even if they have to stretch the timeline or the history a little bit, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, that's not a big deal.
So I'm gonna take a stab. I'm gonna theory craft right now.
All right.
This is where I see this game going. What's the main character's name? Did they say?
Atsu.
Atsu was in one way or another in service to this feudal lord that ends up dying, right? This power vacuum gets created. Mm-hmm. She's in one way or another connected to him, whether that's spouse, daughter, retainer, something. She's somehow connected to this guy. And he is betrayed in some fashion. And everybody she cares about dies in this siege or whatever ends up happening. Everybody she cares about dies. I think we're going to see kind of an echo of Misako's. What was her name from the first one? Masako. I think we're going to see a sort of an echo of Masako's storyline with this character, where she's on a path of vengeance because everybody she cared about was butchered and slaughtered and killed. And she's now a Ronin because she's left out on her own. And in that power vacuum, obviously in any power vacuum, you see lawlessness, you see bandits, you see raiders, you see looting, you see like that's what happens when there's a power vacuum. So regardless of whether or not it's 3 years past the event, or if the event lasted 3 years in a slow moving information world that would have been the 1600s, it probably took them 5, 7, 10 years to reestablish order in all parts of that region that was controlled by that individual, whether that's all of Japan or, a section of it. So my guess is she's being hunted because she's the last retainer of this old lord or whatever the case is. And she's outnumbered and she's got to start taking on more Ghost of Tsushima style tactics for fighting. That's my guess. That's my theory craft for this. I have no basis for that other than what we've seen and what you've said, but that's my theory craft.
So just to add a little bit of depth to what you just said, like that sounds like a plausible storyline. And long story short, after that battle, the person that basically takes over is Tokugawa Ieyasu. He takes over, and that's the shogunate that follows afterwards. And actually, that shogunate rules for another roughly 2.5 centuries. It stops in roughly 1868, and so I wouldn't be terribly surprised if maybe we're fighting the new shogunate instead of Mongols. It's other Japanese people, and
could be.
Because I don't know. I don't think Mongols are an issue 300 years after they tried to attack Tsushima.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know enough about Japanese history. I know this does take place not on the island of Tsushima. It takes place in a different area of Japan, which is what's really cool about the Ghost series is they could easily move around all of Japan throughout history because they have such a rich history that they could be making Ghost games for the next 40 years and I'd be happy so long as they continue the same level of quality. It really could be the successor to Assassin's Creed that we need, right? Like that's the reality is this is already a better franchise than Assassin's Creed has been. Or Tenchu? I don't get my hopes up, man. Don't toy with my emotions. Don't do that to me. Don't toy with my emotions. I mean, so long as they dive deeply into the stealth stuff, then they could easily take that role. Speaking of toying with my emotions, damn, you set me up good for that one. I set you up good for the last one too. You did. You set me up great tonight. We're doing awesome. Good today. A long ago time. When I was a child, I know that's hard to imagine, there was a game series called Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. And they are remastering part 1 and part 2 of one of the freaking greatest PS2 games in history, in my opinion. This was the epitome of when vampires were cool. And PS1 games. Yeah, and PS. Yeah, that's right. I mean, Legacy of Kain. Yeah, so Legacy of Kain is... All right, so we're going to dive into this real quick. This is coming out on PC. It's coming out on all the things in December. I've actually already bought it. The second this got announced, I was on Steam pre-purchasing it. That's how much I love this franchise. This series is hugely awesome. Like, if you've never played Soul Reaver, I promise you, if you like action-adventure games... pick this up. You will love it. You just will. So Legacy of Kain actually has 2 stories to it. It has Blood Omen, which is the story of Kain, which started, I think, on PS1, right? PS1. Yeah. Yep. And Soul Reaver, which is the story of Raziel. Yeah. I don't want to ruin any of the story, so I'm not going to touch on that. But this game plays like Tomb Raider with... God,
how do I even explain it? It's like Devil May Cry Tomb Raider, I guess is the best way I can put it, with Blood Rain aspects because you can suck souls up, but it's got puzzles to it. Dude, it is so fucking cool.
Just to temper those expectations, just a hair. What he's saying is pretty accurate. The only thing I would say is the Devil May Cry reference is it's a lot slower than Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry is way faster.
Yeah,
but that is a pretty apt comparison. It is a similar combat system but slower.
Yeah, you do get multiple weapons. You get the Soul Reaver blade itself. You get different abilities. I guess you know what? It has some Legend of Zelda aspects to it in that aspect, right?
I can see that.
So. Yeah, they long ago announced Legacy of Kain Black Sun, which was a PS3 game that unfortunately was canceled way too early, and it was very promising. It was the first game. There weren't a lot of these, to be clear. I think there was 2 Legacy of Kain's Blood Omens and 2 Legacy of Kain Soul Reavers, and then they made a final game which was Defiance, and I remember getting that for my birthday when I was like 12. It was on PS2, and you actually played a split story where you actually played as Kain and Raziel, which is insane. But like, I can't talk this game up enough. I don't know how to explain to you the level of like nostalgia that this game has. This is up there with Tenchu for me. This game was fantastic, and to see it remastered to the level that they have done is impressive and gorgeous. And I wish it was a full remake, but at the same time, I'm so glad it's not.
It's faithful. It just looks prettier, more or less. I mean, it does have some enhancements to it, which let me go over those real quick. It has high resolution textures, high resolution models, and just graphics in general, as well as a new photo mode, which will be fun. It has a better camera. It has new control options, so probably just more modern controls, as well as better performance and various other small things. It's not a full-on remake from the ground up, but if you were to look at some comparison shots, which there's plenty of those that exist. Yeah. This game is a big upgrade graphically, but it's also not like upgrading from PS1 to PS5 quality. It's actually extremely similar to the damn it, the title was in my head. The Beyond Good and Evil remake that they just made. It's very similar to that, which that's the type of remaster I'm totally cool with, because it's the old game. It just looks better. And then they've got some other enhancements to make it, feel better for the times. So 1% does ask the question here that's on my mind as well. Does this mean they're going to make a new one? Well, I guess that's going to depend on how this one sells. Ultimately, but I think this is the test bed to see whether or not we see the return of Legacy of Kain. And god damn it, I want it. I want it so bad. They made 3 Legacy of Kains, right? There was the one that was about Kain himself, and then there was 2 Soul Reavers, right? I believe there was 2 Blood Omens. There was 2 Blood Omens, so they made 4 Legacy of Kain games. Yep. So and then, this one, by the way, doesn't follow Kain. These remakes, they don't follow the Kain remakes. This is only Soul Reaver, therefore Raziel. It's just Raziel's storyline. Yes. So it's Soul Reaver 1 and 2. Yes. So there's technically 5 games that released. There is Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain Blood Omen, that came out in 1996. Then they released Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, which is this first game. Then they went Soul Reaver 2, and then Blood Omen 2, and then they went Legacy of Kain Defiance, and then Nosgoth, which was, I think, a pretty failed game. I actually never played Nosgoth. Nosgoth is the world's name. But yeah, so they kind of did they did the first game to give you the background on what happened. So to give you some background, this is literally a post-apocalyptic world you're playing in where vampires destroyed the world. You actually play that story in the first Blood Omen where Kain becomes the first vampire and just straight up starts destroying the world from the ground up. I'm sorry to interrupt you
No,
here,
you're
but
good.
wasn't Nosgoth like a effectively a Quake style multiplayer game?
I'm looking it up now. That sounds right. It looks like it was some third person. It was a free to play multiplayer action game by Psyonix and Square, and it was not well received, from my understanding.
Yeah, no, it was a bastardization of what Legacy of Kain is.
Yeah,
and nobody wanted it, and therefore it failed pretty quickly.
And then they tried to do Black Sun, which could have been great. Could have been great.
Dead Sun?
Dead Sun, excuse me, which could have been great. But these are the games, honestly, if you never played them, if you've never heard of them, and you like action adventure games, you like, let's say, the Tomb Raider games, the old ones, right? The remastered of the old Tomb Raider games. If you like that, if you like puzzles, if you like deep story, these were those games when I was a kid, and they're fantastic. Like the story of Raziel is awesome, and I cannot talk this game up enough.
Raziel's my favorite,
particularly.
Yeah.
I like
remember
Kain because he's a great villain. Like they did such a great job making him a villain, but Raziel is amazing.
Yes.
The story there is basically a Kain. Thousands of years after Kain destroyed the world, basically the pillars of Nosgoth is what like held all of the world together. He quote unquote gave birth to the vampire race and raised a bunch of vampires in his image, basically destroying the world, literally post-apocalyptic. And Raziel, he's the first vampire to develop wings. So he actually surpassed his quote unquote father Kain, and for that he was sentenced to damnation, which is why he looks the way he does. It's an incredibly awesome story, and that's all I'm going to say, but it gets wild from there. Seriously,
Let me just throw in here. The game releases on all the platforms, as we've said already.
Yep.
On December 10th.
Yep.
And it's only $30.
Yes.
This is an insanely cheap remaster.
It's actually $26.99 right now on Steam if you pre-purchase. So you save. And I did, and I recommend it to everyone and anyone who hears this. I know I've said that like 12 times now. I'll shut up, but god damn it.
I believe that $26.99 price is actually everywhere, because nice. On the actual Crystal Dynamics website, it straight up says available for pre-order today with a 10% discount on the until the official launch.
Nice.
So if you pre-order it before it comes out, you can buy it for $27 rather than $30. And he's 100% correct. It's one of those pillar franchises that released when we were kids that was like personality forming almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this game is one of the ones that I've thought about throughout my entire life. I've actually bought the game on PS2 like 3 times, because every time I see it, I'm like, do I own this game? And stupid me goes, no, and buys it again and just,
there's nothing wrong with
I have an extra copy now.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
And so this game, I've been playing it since PS1, and they're such fantastic games. Yeah. And really, I don't know how else to add anything that Russ hasn't already said. We didn't announce this. This information came out before us, and we just shared the news. But this was probably 2.5, 3 months ago. Was it PAX? There was somewhere where
it wasn't PAX, but it was. God, I want to say it was shortly before PAX. They had the statues somewhere. I can't remember where.
There were statues that straight up said Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remaster. We're like, this isn't a mistake. This is not a mistake. And like, I don't know how this wasn't a teaser. Although that teaser is straight up, hey, we're making this. We're just not telling you we're making it. We're just telling you we're making it. Like, I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
And like 1% asks here, does this mean there's going to be a new one? I think if this sells well. So I don't care if you like the series, buy it anyway, so it sells well, so we can get a Soul Reaver 3 or Legacy of Kain 3 sequel.
Yeah.
Please just buy it for me. It's $30. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Buy it and then sell it to somebody else for $30. They'll buy it from you.
Just find your local old man, and he'll probably buy the game. Dude, I gotta say, so since getting the Konami code on my arm, I have realized how old I am. All the young kids are like, is that a DDR reference?
Nobody knows what it is, right?
They go, is that a DDR reference, or is that a Helldivers reference? And then I was at AT&T talking to a dude older than me. He's like, oh, Konami code. Yeah, you play Contra? I was like, yeah, bro. Fuck, I'm old.
Man, I being
Dude
in the
had
electoral
gray hair,
unions,
man, like full gray hair, and he knew the contra code, and I'm just like, fuck.
I know. Being in the electoral union, there's always new apprentices that are first years or whatever coming in, right? And many of them are 18 years old, and I'm getting to the point where I'm just like, God, 18-year-olds are fucking retarded. Like, no offense to our fan base, but it's I'm not going to
it's life experience. It's all it is. It's
I
life
was just as
experience.
retarded when I was 18.
It's life experience.
How it is.
Yep.
Exactly. And trying to talk to them about anything I care about.
Yeah.
They're just like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, kill me now.
When are you going to learn your lesson, old man? Yeah. No jokes.
More or less.
But yeah, dude, I've had people be like, oh, you're really into DDR, huh? And I was like, what?
I was 20 years ago.
Yeah, when I had the pad in my room connected to my CRTV. Right. Yeah, with my memory card that was 8 megabytes and it was huge that it was 8 megabytes. Yeah.
Right. 1% says it correctly. When are you going to learn your lesson?
True story.
The SpongeBob reference, by the way. For
how many times?
Not you. For you youngins, is a SpongeBob reference.
Yeah. So before we jump into the quickfire news, I want to make a quick announcement here because it makes me giggle. There is someone who has decided to capitalize on the incredible love of Warhammer 40K going around. I actually just posted the link in our stream chat. He's making or is selling ugly sweaters that are inspired by Warhammer 40K. I already bought one because they're like $60, but like they're actually impressively well designed. If you like Warhammer 40K and you have a sense of humor, check out the link and maybe consider buying one. I like I said, I bought one the second I saw it. I was like, I can't not. This is fantastic. They're very
if you
cool.
like Warhammer,
yeah. If
you like Warhammer, then buy it for your Christmas party or whatever Christmas party you attend.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty nice.
The Emperor demands it, and to do otherwise would be heresy. So join us, brothers and sisters, in our awesome Warhammer ugly sweaters. That link will also be in the show notes for our audio listeners and all of that. I promise you all the links will be there, but I can't guarantee he's going to have any left. So they're awesome. Check them out. This is why you got to watch the stream or pay for our Patreon and get the podcast a day early. Might save you some stuff. Hey, check that out. All right, Tim, what do you got for us for quickfire, man?
Okay, so Russ tells me that they kind of told us this already, but
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I don't listen to him. Dragon Age Veilguard basically confirmed that.
You said Veilguard, bro.
Veilguard, sorry. It ignores the choices of DA 1 and 2 that you may have made in your previous save files and only takes basically your choices from Inquisition, but only 3 of them. And their reasoning to me sucks, but it sucked for some of the Mass Effect 3. Yeah, Mass Effect 3. That's just me. They're used to making bad decisions, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The next bit of news is a laughable offense. I'm going to call this an offense. The Day Before devs, Fantastic, they're back. They're back from the dead with a Kickstarter saying, hey, help us support our new game. We promise honesty and transparency.
Do they think we're stupid?
Obviously. I mean, hell, haven't they done this like, I don't know, 10 times or something like that?
I mean, they have their track record is garbage, so this would be like their 5th time. But yeah, like it's very much the SpongeBob meme. How many times we got to teach you this lesson, old man?
Exactly. Yeah. God help us if their Kickstarter finishes, which they straight up said. They pointed out the fact that the Kickstarter is all or nothing. If they don't get funded, then you're going to get your money back. But God help us if they get funded.
Is it open currently? I need to know. Is it open right now?
I don't think it's opened yet. I don't think it's open just yet.
We will report on whether or not someone or anyone is out there crazy enough to fund that. So we will report on that, just so you know.
If it gets funded, then we will definitely.
If it gets any amount of money, I will be reporting it. If it gets $2, I'm going to be like, some wild asshole.
Yep. Moving on, there are rumors that suggest, although there's been rumors that suggest this already, there's new rumors suggesting that the Switch 2 is straight up done. It's complete. Its development is finished. And that it will release in either March or April. We'll see. Along with Nintendo Switch, Nintendo themselves, this one's actually comes from, I believe it's Miyamoto. I didn't write this down, but I believe it was from Miyamoto. Nintendo basically said AI, no, they're not doing AI. They don't like AI, and they don't want to lose the, I don't know, I guess the Nintendo sugar that makes their games great. So
spice and everything nice.
Yes.
And then a little bit of Chemical X.
I saw someone at work wearing a Powerpuff Girls shirt, and I was like, man, I haven't thought about that in 15 years.
Half our audience has no idea what the fuck we're talking about.
It's a phenomenal show from when me and Russ were kids. It's still totally worth watching. If you haven't watched Powerpuff Girls, go watch it.
It holds
up. Even for men or boys, it's a great show.
It is.
Absolutely.
There's some very interesting choices in the characters in that show, and they're hilarious.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, this is a quick mention. The PlayStation 5 Pro's 30th anniversary edition sold out in seconds.
Yeah.
Because of course, why wouldn't it? I tried to get one just because why not?
Sure.
I knew it was going to be a stupid price, but I figured why not? When I got through the queue, which I got through the queue on PlayStation Direct, I was like, sweet, I can actually try. I couldn't find the Pro 30th anniversary.
That's
literally
lame.
It didn't exist on their website. And then after looking for it for about 5 to 7 minutes, I found out that it sold out in seconds.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, fuck me. Also, to throw extra on that 30th anniversary, there's some versions, or there's listings on eBay selling bids for over $4,000 to this. There's one listing for $35,000. There's people that have this in their cart.
Can I ask a question? Do we know if the plates come off the PS5 Pro?
I don't think the new slim model has plates in traditional like the original PlayStation 5. I don't think they've released them, and the fact that the PlayStation State of Play that happened recently, they released a new quote Chroma collection, which is basically PS5 in different chrome colors. Right. Sort of suggests there aren't plates like this, which would make the anniversary edition actually, worth having.
Well,
I don't know. I don't have this slim model, and I don't know if they release plates.
One of them has to, right? Because the disk drive. But
you think so? You think so? Yeah. So that's actually the thing. The PS5 Pro 30th anniversary doesn't come with a disk drive, but it does come with a disk drive cover that keeps the theme going on.
Huh.
So, I don't know.
Just paint it gray. Get some plastic dip and spray your system gray.
Oh my God.
If you really want it to be gray, you can make it gray for like $20, man.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought, and I'm probably going to do that.
Yeah. If you can disassemble it in some way or another to pull those plates off, like fucking plastic dip it or something. I don't know. Get some acrylic paint that bonds to plastic.
I mean, one of the big deals with the PlayStation 5 was the fact that it had those little vacuum ports. If you took the face plates off, you could vacuum the dust out because the dust was pushed towards those little ports.
Makes sense.
So I would imagine they kept that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I will give you the information on if that's the case when I buy my PS5 Pro.
Fair enough.
I did some Uber deliveries today. I delivered some people for the first time ever, and it definitely makes more money. But my point is I'm going to put some of that towards my PS5 Pro.
You putting doctors out of business, bro?
Right? Fuck them doctors.
I'm sorry. The way you said I delivered some people today, I was just...
Oh, yeah. No, I just find that funny. Instead of delivering food, I'm delivering people. Yeah. That's just the way I say it.
It's an accurate description. It's very funny.
Right? I mean, that's what I'm doing.
Yep.
So, continuing the PlayStation news, PlayStation's PlayStation 3 franchise, Siren, was rated in Korea. I don't know what this means. I can't imagine that Siren didn't release in Korea in the PlayStation 3 era. So maybe this is a remaster, maybe it's a remake, maybe it's a sequel. It's a horror franchise, mind you, and it was very, very good. I'm really interested to see what this is. The fact that it was rated in Korea is kind of interesting. It's probably just the fact that Korea is a smaller country and they, accidentally posted this early. I don't know. We'll find out.
I remember this game. I don't think I ever played it, but I remember seeing it.
Siren was very, very good.
Blood Curse, right? Siren Blood Curse, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Huh. So we'll see what this means. I'm sure soon enough. Maybe by the end of the year. Maybe at the Game Awards.
Yeah.
I don't know. Speaking of the Game Awards or just PlayStation in general, there's been rumors from a lot of industry insiders that apparently Sony has actually a lot coming in 2025. We just don't know what it is yet.
They've been saying that since like 2020.
Like I said, I don't know if that's speculation. I mean, Sony's had a really good year, or they had a really good PlayStation 5 launch or PlayStation 5 cycle. Every year's been really good except for this last year for first parties. Yeah. And the fact that this last year they haven't really had shit for first party would suggest that this was just kind of a year off for them. They did make sure that there was plenty of third party titles, exclusive titles this year. There was a lot of really good third party exclusive titles this year. So, I mean, ultimately, I guess I'm not really all that upset because there was lots of really good games this year. Anyways, hopefully that, rumor of there being lots of titles next year is true. We'll find out. Moving on, Xbox is continuing their mass layoffs. They've decided to fire another 400 about people, and apparently they're all California employees. So
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why it's just California employees. I didn't see any specifications as to why, but they've fired over 1,000 people now since saying they wouldn't fire anybody after buying Activision, because these are actually specifically Activision Blizzard employees.
Jesus Christ. You would think that would nullify the deal, right? Like you would think they'd be like, "Yeah, nope, sorry, you don't own them anymore."
Yeah, you lied and you proved it like 5 times now. Like, maybe we can let you get away with 1 or 2, but after that, no.
Yeah.
Anyways, the last one that I have for you is Monster Hunter Wilds is getting a crazy collector's edition in Japan.
Yep. Take
a guess at how much this costs, Russ.
I believe it's $1,600 or so. $1,652, something like that. 12 something. It's over $1,000.
$1,300.
That's what it was. Yeah. Yes. I did see that article, and me and Chris both laughed our asses off about it.
Did you see what it comes with?
But why don't you tell our listeners?
It comes with a bike.
And an ugly bike at that. A god awful. Bike, yes. You would think, Monster Hunter comes with a bike? That's cool. It's got to look awesome. It looks horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I understand why they chose the bike. There's not a lot of people that actually drive vehicles in Japan because it's, public transportation or bikes.
Yeah.
I get that. But at least could have made a good looking one.
Yes, he said bike.
I said bike.
Bicycle. 2 wheels, handlebars, bell that goes ding, ding, ding. Bicycle. Maybe a basket. This one's one of those like, come on, Capcom, you guys make hundreds of millions of dollars every year, or yen every year. You could have made one that was pretty, at least. Yeah, it is only available in Japan though. The rest of the world does not get the access to that $1,200, $1,300
$1,300.
Yeah.
If you want one, you're going to have to figure out someone in Japan who's willing to send it to you for stupid amounts extra. I mean, that's assuming you want this ugly bike.
If I had the money, like if I just had fuck off money, I would totally do that just to fuck with people. Like just to be the one guy in America that has this fucking bike that is just like, what the fuck are you riding, dude?
Ride this thing around and be like, what? Oh, good Lord.
Imagine how cool it'd be if you wrote it not in Japan. Exactly.
It's really hard to just tell you how ugly this thing is. You really have to go look this thing up.
Just I'll put a link in the description for that one, Monster Hunter Wilds Collector's Edition, so you can see just how incredibly ugly it is.
I can just think off the top of my head some really cool ideas for a bike, because I remember when I was, a teenager or even a preteen, and I'm like, these bikes are badass. Mm-hmm. And I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what they were thinking here.
It's a choice.
Yeah,
it's a choice.
I don't know how to word it other than this is a perfect example. Even if you haven't been in the military, there's a common term for the glasses they give you in basic training. They're called BCGs. Birth control glasses, as we like to call them.
Yes.
This is a birth control bike.
BCB.
Yes.
The BCGs are actually called BCGs, though. They are basic combat glasses.
They are.
Yeah, they look like you got Coke bottles on your face, and they're just as ugly plastic as you can get. They're like the brown wannabe. They're awful.
If you haven't seen the movie, shit, the title escapes me.
That's a weird title for a movie.
I'm sorry.
Full Metal Jacket.
My stapler.
That's Office Space. Yeah.
Office Space. I knew Office was in it, but Office Space.
Yep.
They're like his glasses. If you haven't seen that movie, that's how bad they are. They're awful. And my point is this bike is that awful.
Yep.
It's a BCB.
Yep, it's a BCB, birth control bike. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up tonight. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. Again, if the audio quality on this episode is trash, I apologize. I did my best, which is not very good because I don't know shit about audio. So, I love you. Tim,
hopefully the direct audio recording makes up for that. With that said, tell your mother I said absolutely glorious good night.
Good night. It's supposed to be high.